Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you so much for the call.
Great talking to you.
You too.
Ciao.
Okay, great caller. Oh, what he was saying is so true and appropriate, and it's great to hear someone who has made that transformational change from someone who had undergone a lot of heavy programming. I mean, heavy religious programming, heavy military programming, and still came out of it and healed his worldview and is on that rocket ship ride, that, ascending rocket ride to higher consciousness, in his own words. And it's so true. It's a stepwise progression. But once you make it, once you set foot on that path, they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Once you set foot on that path, there's really no turning back. Once the process of the breaking down of the big lie begins, it's inevitable. It's a matter of time before it all crumbles away. Once you're on that path of truth as well, you'll notice that synchronicity will develop in your life. Things that didn't happen or that were cumbersome and took so long to happen before will happen faster at a more accelerated rate. The pace of awakening and the discovery of truth will also accelerate, almost to a point where you'll wonder, how can I take it all in? This is coming at me so fast, how can I even take it all in? And that's why you just need to maintain that openness and that receptivity, and just make a decision within your mind that you're not going to stop, that you're going to go forward and go all the way to the end of the journey. And there is really no end, but you're going to go all the way in this world to where it takes you, to the inevitable end that it takes you to, which is really getting out of all of the fundamentally flawed axioms and worldview poisoning that you once held attachment to in your life. Once that all breaks down, you can see the truth as it actually is, and then once you develop some true deep self-respect and true deep confidence in yourself, which is really what we're talking about here is courage, then you're going to put yourself out there for other people so that they can learn from what you have already had the benefit of learning and experiencing, and then you're going to help them make that same journey. That's what this is all ultimately about. And again, that's what I've said repeatedly. That's why I do this show. I don't do it to try to reach the walking dead. As the saying goes, the zombies that are part of the zombie apocalypse. And those people are out there. I mean, as harsh and, unfriendly as that can sound saying it, all you need to do is just look at people's actions on a weekend like this, where the holiday shopping season is in full effect and all these deals are being made by these merchants. And, people are just, treating each other like animals, acting like animals over physical goods that you don't even really need, consumer electronics and smartphones and, games and DVDs. And it's so ridiculous that we've come into this level of identification with material consumerism that people are willing to maim and even trample people to get a thing, to get hold of a thing for cheaper than they ordinarily would. It just is. It's an indictment against the human species in a lot of ways. But, while there are many people who act that way, there are many people who are on the higher path, such as the gentleman who just called. So I just want to briefly touch on that before we go to the next caller. I mean, we saw people on the street yesterday. I mean, my heart just goes out to some of them because they have been degraded to a point of it's almost, can you call this being a human being? Can you call them truly human? I don't even know what to call them. They have been turned into some form of creature that is somehow less than human. They've been turned into like a golem, literally. It's like there's no responsiveness in some of their eyes at all. It's like they're just staring off into the distance, like they're looking through you, like they're not even there. There's hardly any personal engagement at all. You could tell they have their mind a mile into the future. They're not present in the moment at all of what's going on around them. You could tell they're focused only on themselves. Obsessive self-focus, obsession with the self. And I'm not talking about the higher S self. I mean the lower case, ego-identified, 5 sense, physical world is all there is notion of self. And it's so sad to see because these people are just they're being soft killed. They're being murdered and don't even understand that they're being murdered. They don't understand that there's a war on them. They don't understand that their food is poisoned. They don't understand that all the media they have access to in their life is completely untrue and just, laden with poison that can only do harm to them if they take it into their mind. They don't understand that they're being, hit with radionics and, chemical spray and every other form of poison against the mind, the body, the consciousness that these sick, twisted psychopaths can throw at them. They don't understand that any of that's taking place. They're at war, and they're casualties of war and don't even understand that they are. And, we need to try to figure out some methodology of snapping these people out of this state, because there is way buried down deep, buried deep within them, a spark that possibly, if ignited, could heal them. And again, you can even hear the hesitation or doubt in my voice when I say that, because some of the people we came across yesterday, you could not even imagine. And it's like, they're all out there too, feeding into this whole, feeding frenzy of go out and consume, go buy, the prices are the lowest they're going to be, And, even handing people a flyer on the march yesterday was even difficult because so many people had bags in their hand, in both hands, couldn't carry anything else. And those are the people who are like the least receptive, the people who are the most crazed with all of the, physical goods and all the consumer items, were like totally wrapped up in their own stuff and didn't have a moment, didn't have a second to even divert the attention to a flyer for 5 seconds, and say, oh, let me just take it and I'll read it later. Not even that. Can't be bothered. So it was a big dichotomy from the last march, which I saw a lot of receptivity. So it's very possible that changes during the course of the year, depending on what season it is, depending on what kind of energy is out there, maybe even depending on what the weather is like. We had really cold, dreary, cloudy weather yesterday. It was the coldest day in a while. And I think that affects the energy system of the mind and body of people, unless they're at a high enough level of consciousness to kind of counteract that and, sustain themselves through that low energy point. But most people who aren't at that level of consciousness, they, take the brunt of that energy hit. They're allowing themselves really to be victimized by these ebbs and flows in the quality of time that many different researchers have talked about, over time. And they really don't have the consciousness energy, the muscle, if you will, to really offer any resistance to that. It's like a weight that's upon them and they don't have the strength to lift it. And you just saw that yesterday on the march. At least I did. I don't know if anybody else that was involved in the Fed rally and march here in Philadelphia or in any other cities saw that same level of energy depletion and overall lethargicness in the public. We, again, have to renew our efforts to somehow combat this and get these people to engage, because they are under attack. This is a war that we're waging. It's a war in consciousness, and it's a war against the people of the earth. And we need these people involved in the battle. This is a spiritual battle that's being waged, whether anybody wants to admit that or not, or understands it or not. That's what it is. And we need these people to engage on that battlefield of life. So, if anybody wants to offer some suggestions or talk about the dynamic that they see playing out in their area, especially if they're an activist, I would definitely like to hear from you. Once again, the toll-free number to join us to talk about solutions is 866-841-1065. I briefly talked a little bit about the dynamic I saw on the march to hand out information about the Federal Reserve System yesterday. And I'll have another little anecdote when we have another lull in callers, but we have another caller on the line, so let's go to the phones again. David in Idaho, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, David.
Hey, Mark, this is David, and thanks for having your show. And I just had a question in reference to an older show.
Sure.
You were talking about the pentagram and how it increased in its ability to influence the user if you stood in the middle and then it was open, had an open side. And I just wondered how that related to the Pentagon on 9/11 and opening the side of that.
Yes, we did briefly bring that up, and again, this isn't necessarily my belief. It is simply something that I was covering about what the beliefs of occultists happen to be and how they view the pentagram as a symbol and its capabilities and what they use it for. So, I don't want people to say that's my belief system. It is something I'm making people aware of that is a belief system that is out there and is deeply held by people who are into the occult, especially the dark aspects of the occult, to summon beings and use them for their purposes, for their egoic, selfish purposes. They feel that can be done. That is part of their belief system. Whether it can or cannot is up to each individual to decide for themselves. But we talked about this as being part of a summoning, to summon an energy from a higher dimensional space. And that is very, very possible indeed why the entire events of 9/11 played out the way they did, with one aspect of the pentagram, the Pentagon, which is the hub, the central hub of a pentagram, being broken. We talked about the broken pentagram in that symbolism as being in the occult world, especially the world of ritualistic magic, as being a symbol for a pact with an extra-dimensional entity, or a demon, if you will. Okay? So the broken pentagram is often called the sign of the cloven hoof, or the pentagram of pacts. And I do believe this was the symbolism that was invoked on 9/11. It is part of the entire ritual that 9/11 was, and that breaking of that one side of the pentagon as being an aspect of the pentagram is definitely an aspect of invocation to what entity, to what form of energy. That's anyone's call, but I would suggest what they're really invoking is the force of fear itself. And if you want to call that Satan, I've explained to people that Satan is derived from the Hebrew term shaitan, which simply means the adversary or the opposer. And our adversary and opposer at the ultimate level is fear itself, because this ritual was an injection, a mass injection of fear. An invocation of fear, summoning it, and then injecting it into the mass